Hello everybody, and what's going on? This is Sports Talk today, and we were talking about my New York Islanders. If you're new to the channel, this is my first full video, and we cover mostly baseball and hockey. Obviously, I'm a Mets and an Islanders fan, so hopefully in the future, if you want to leave a comment and, like I said, subscribe to the channel, we'll talk a lot more Mets news and Islanders news and sports in general, but mostly we cover baseball and hockey on this channel. But like I said earlier in the video today, we're going to be talking about my New York Islanders because a lot has been going on in the past couple weeks, last month, that has really changed the direction of this franchise. Obviously, back just a little over a month ago, the Islanders were eliminated from playoff contention, and it was a very mediocre season. I believe they finished .500 on the season, and things just kind of felt like the Islanders were stuck in like no man's land, right in the middle. And luckily last year there was a little bit of hope when they didn't trade the first round pick, and they got Cole Yzerman, which I am a huge fan of. But really, up until this trade deadline, it felt like not really a whole lot was going on for the Islanders. It felt like we're this old team, and even though we're talking more about Patrick Roy, I'm a fan of his. I just felt like even him bringing in, he really didn't change much, and just that this roster really just wasn't really meant to go any further than just be a team that, best case scenario, sneaks into the playoffs and loses in the first round. But luckily, after missing the playoffs, which I think is the biggest blessing, one of the biggest blessings, we've had a lot of blessings as Islanders fans recently, but the biggest one was just missing the playoffs, and then the team finally decides to get rid of Lou Lamoriello. And I know a lot of people have a lot of hate for Lou. For me, really, the hate didn't come until like these past 2 years, and just really especially this year, where I feel like the Islanders really have to commit one way or another. It's like, all right, are we going to be trying to be a playoff team, or are we going to kind of try to rebuild? It kind of felt like we were doing nothing. Like, obviously, we did trade the first round pick 2 years ago, I believe, to acquire Bo Horvat, but it felt like we were making minor tweaks. Like, very, bringing one player here, and like, obviously last offseason acquiring Anthony Duclair, but I felt like either you had to be aggressive and get more pieces, which I don't think would have been the right move, but it would have been something, or, you start trading people away. And for Lou, he just kind of was in the middle. But with that being said, before that, I have a ton of respect. Obviously, after John Tavares left in free agency, the Islanders were kind of just stuck in a real bad situation, and somehow that turned into making the playoffs every year except this past year in 2022. So 5 of the 7 years making the playoffs, which is really good. And more importantly, we went on a lot of runs. Besides these last 2 years where we lost in the first round to Carolina, we made it to the second round after sweeping Pittsburgh. Obviously, got swept by Carolina, and then obviously going on the 2 long COVID bubble conference run to lose against Tampa, or even 2021, where once again you lose in Game 7 to Tampa. But the team had a lot of success in the beginning under Lou Lamoriello, but it seemed by the end it just kind of was just not going in the right direction, and you were getting worried that he was just going to keep trading first-round picks or keep trying to re-sign these players. But luckily, this past trade deadline, I think he made a move that surprised a lot of us, where he traded Brock Nelson. And not only trading Brock Nelson would have been a good thing, but to trade him and get a first-round pick in return and Callum Ritchie was huge for the Islanders and huge for the progression of this franchise. And that's easily, in my opinion, that's the highest point as an Islanders fan. On ice, really, there was not a lot to be grateful about, but the trade that finally, we're not going to let Nelson walk or, re-sign him to some not great contract. We decided to do the right thing, and I think the Islanders definitely won that trade in the sense, unless Brock Nelson resigns with Colorado, which I don't see really happening. Getting a young guy like Callum Ritchie plus the first round pick next year, I think that's huge. But now getting back to the future, when the Islanders decided to let go of Lou Lamoriello, I feel like that was a huge sign for the franchise. Not only for the NHL team, but also the AHL team, which I believe set multiple records for least amount of wins at home. Like in Bridgeport, it is god awful, and just you could tell the franchise. Well, listen, there's a lot worse franchises than the Islanders, making the playoffs 5 to 7 years, and there's a lot worse situations to be in, like in Buffalo, but still, you were just kind of seeing this was on a downward slope, and just something needed to change. And luckily for the Islanders, some people really liked it sooner. Really, for me, I wasn't really getting sour on Lou until just this past season, where I was like, all right, maybe we need a change. Because, even the past 2 years, you make the first round, you make the playoffs. I mean, you take the playoffs, you can make the playoffs. That's always great. But after losing the second time to Carolina in 5 games, so less games than the year before, you could definitely tell, like, all right, maybe we need to switch things up. And luckily now, obviously a few days ago, the Islanders introduced new GM Matthew Darche, who was the assistant GM in Tampa. And while I'm not really sure of all the things he did in Tampa, really, but obviously being the assistant GM, he played a lot of roles in these Tampa teams that are, even to this day, even though I know they got eliminated in Florida in the first round, they're still very much great teams that are consistently making the playoffs. And obviously, he was, of course, the GM when they won the Stanley Cup Finals both years, getting past the Islanders, and even making it back again to the Cup Final, where they lose to Colorado. But going on 3 straight Cup Finals appearances, winning back-to-back, but then even making it to 3 straight is really hard to do. I mean, I guess unless you're a Florida team, because every year it feels like a Florida team's going deep to the Cup Final and either winning it or getting there. So, anyways, but the point is, he is coming from a successful franchise where he learned, from a great GM in Tampa Bay there, and he's just really has had a lot of success, obviously as the assistant GM, but he's been witnessing it all, and I think if he can really give any of that influence to the Islanders, that's going to be really huge. And now that'd be good in and of itself, but then obviously, as many of you know, the Islanders, with the surprise of all time in hockey circles, they had like a 3.5% chance of winning the first overall pick, which they did win, which is, I still can't believe to this day. It's absolutely crazy that they jumped from 10 to 1. But not only that, now that kind of makes you feel even better now. Because, listen, getting a top 10 pick, you're going to get a decent player, but now getting the first overall pick, you've guaranteed yourself, like, I mean, obviously I know it's not a Connor Bedard or Macklin Celebrini or next year's Gavin McKenna, but you're still guaranteeing yourself a fantastic player. Whether it's Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, or even James Higgins. I'm biased in the sense, obviously, Higgins being the Long Island kid, but obviously I think probably it'll be Schaefer or Misa. Obviously I wouldn't be complaining if it's any one of those 3, because realistically the Islanders, going from the 10th, had the 10th overall pick odds, only 3.5% chance, as I said before. You really didn't expect to get any of these 3 guys. So to get any one of them would be great, but obviously I think it'll be Schaefer just because of how hard it is defensively. And, hard to get a elite defensive player. And so when any chance you can get one, obviously you take that. So, but either way, they call Schaefer, Misa, Higgins. I think most Islanders fans, I know I definitely won't be mad, because I'm on cloud 9 that we still have the first overall pick, and that's just pushing along this retool, as you want to call. And that's another thing with the Islanders, is that they are still in a very interesting spot as a franchise, where they have a lot of talent. I think when you have a guy like Ilya Sorokin, a top 5 goaltender in the league, I think he'd even be the best goalie in the league. He's proven that in the past, but these past 2 years he's definitely not been up to his standards. You have a guy like Noah Dobson, who did have a down year, but, maybe him and Schaefer, or, you can kind of have that good top pair. And in general, just maybe, bringing a guy like Schaefer that can take some pressure off of Dobson to be the franchise defenseman. So I think that's huge in that sense as well. And then offensively, obviously, if you take Misa, that adds so much depth. But even then, right now, obviously, you have a guy like Matt Barzal, who I truly think is the best skater in the NHL. And obviously, all us Islanders fans, know the point totals don't really represent how great of a player he is. And he's just a dynamic player. And I think finally getting him an elite goal scorer is going to just do wonders for his career and just for the Islanders in general. But, bringing in a guy like Callum Ritchie, that I think it seems like he'll be on the Islanders next year, is going to be huge. And eventually when you get a guy like Cole Eiserman, who, his game's not perfect, but he is a goal scorer, which is something the Islanders desperately need. So I think even if you go Schaefer, obviously Misa or Higgins helps that offense even more. Being if you go Schaefer, the Islanders still have a lot of upcoming offensive weapons that make you go, this is the place the Islanders offense hasn't been in years. And plus, the defense obviously will need some restructuring. But, as long as you have Sorokin, you really can never rebuild, because he's just a fantastic goaltender. And so that really brings us back now to Patrick Roy, which I mentioned earlier. Roy, there was a lot of debate of whether he'd come back. Obviously it's, he's been in an interesting spot, and he's obviously had some interesting situations, obviously with Anthony Duclair this past year, calling him god-awful, probably wasn't the best move as a coach, but nonetheless, I think Patrick Roy is a fantastic coach. And maybe I don't think he's like on the level like Barry Trotz, but I think if you give him a really good roster, he can make things work. And I think, obviously we saw when he first came to the island that he helped the Islanders, get to the playoffs. And I feel like that's kind of the best he could really do with this roster. And along with that too, I felt like this year the Islanders were just destroyed by injuries. And obviously, you still have to get the best out of your players, but when your roster's not the best, and then all your really good players get injured, it's really hard to expect too much success. So I think, obviously, earlier today, which has really inspired me to make this video, they made another announcement that Patrick Roy will be back. And I think that's the right move. Because obviously, if things go wrong, you fire him, you move on, but you gave him the shot. And if not, I think he can really elevate this roster, right? Because I think Patrick Roy is, like I said, not on the level of Barry Trotz, where I feel like Barry Trotz, whether he's with Nashville, Washington, or obviously the Islanders, no matter really what roster you get, he kind of makes everyone perform above what you expect. And Roy did a decent amount to get a lot out of that roster as he did, but I just feel like it's not really working out. So I think a little restructure, obviously getting the first overall pick. Maybe obviously a guy like Kyle Palmieri, I know is a free agent. I kind of wanted to trade him because I'm not really big on bringing him back, and that's nothing against Kyle Palmieri. But it's just, I think you want to maybe get younger, and even free agent-wise, obviously Mitch Marner is on the market. There's a lot of other free agents on the market that are younger than Kyle Palmieri, who's in his mid-30s. And I think that maybe is the way to go. But the overall point of this video is to talk about how much in 1 month the trajectory of the New York Islanders has changed. They went from a year ago, after being eliminated by Carolina, I think their top prospect was like Matthew Maggio. But in no disrespect to him, but that's not great. And their prospect system was ranked bottom 3. It was just, the team wasn't succeeding well. They barely making the playoffs. And then you look at the prospect system, there's nothing really exciting coming up. So to change from 1 year would be crazy. Just, obviously bringing in Cole Yzerman, and then Callum Ritchie was great. But then even this past month, where now Lou Lamoriello, which once again, much respect for him, but the change was needed. He's gone. You bring in this new GM, Matthew Darche, who is very much different from Lamoriello and his methods, which I think is good. You want someone probably completely different than your previous GM if you want to make a GM switch. And I think he's completely different from Lamoriello. So you get someone with a completely different philosophy and a different style. And now obviously getting the first overall pick, that means you're only going to get another young talent. So in the past year, adding Yzerman, Ritchie, obviously a guy like Danny Nelson, obviously, and then now getting this first overall pick, whoever that is, adding to the prospect system, that is a decent little core of players. Listen, it's not the best farm system by any means, but I think you want to mix a lot of the young with the older, not just have all old guys, which is what the Islanders basically were having. So a good little mixture of young guys, and maybe letting a guy like Palmieri go. Maybe there's rumors of trading J.G. Pageau, and I think those things aren't necessarily a bad thing. And then obviously bring Callum Ritchie next season. Maybe Cole Yzerman, I think he's going to be going back to BU, but you never know. Maybe if the future team looks exciting, you'll see his decision. But and then maybe, I don't know, if they have a lot more cap space, so they could possibly make a move for a Mitch Marner. And I think that'd be really funny as an Islander fan. He did the reverse John Tavares. So I don't know. As an Islander fan, I'd find that quite funny. But anyways, it's just a lot is changing on the Islanders, and I think, while of course, as many Islanders fans, we love that 2020, 2021 group where, they went to the conference final. Some of them have left, but some are still here. But I think we can all agree, while that is great, at the end of the day, since losing that Game 7 to Tampa, they've missed the playoffs. They've gotten eliminated in the first round twice, 1-5, 1-6. So, really not even going, making it a full series. And this year, once again, missing the playoffs. So, at the end of the day, you love it, but you gotta kind of move on. And this is the new future of the New York Islanders. And I think as Islanders fans, it's an exciting time. And I'm very excited to see what the team does this offseason. And that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys could please leave a like and subscribe, as I'm new to the YouTube game and trying to, get more sports content out there. Obviously I talk a lot of Islanders. Hopefully a lot more Mets too. Obviously the Mets are doing really well this season, so we'll get into more videos about them. But if you have any video ideas, I could, upcoming free agent predictions for the NHL, any MLB video ideas, please leave it in the comments section below, and we'll definitely get that covered. And also I also have another YouTube channel for my movie channel, the Movie Talk. So obviously I know a lot of you sports fans here, but if you also like talking movies, I have another channel for that. But anyways, thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.